Today, we're going to look at some of the exercises that you can include to improve hip mobility. We're also going to look at exercises that you can include to help release your hamstrings. And we're going to talk a little bit about why this is such a common issue and why it's important. So, when we look at why this is such a common issue, hip mobility is one of the most common issues that we see in our clients and people who come in who may be having trouble. It's super common in folks who are having low back pain to find that they are locked down in their hips and they have tight hip flexors. The reason is that we all sit too much. Even with best of intentions, even in a profession where I am active and up and moving a lot, it still is something that I have to work on because inevitably I'm spending time in my car, I'm spending time at my desk. So when I'm seated, my hip flexors are in a constantly engaged position. They are in flexion the entire time that I'm seated. And so when I go to stand up, if I have been sitting for a long period of time, my hip flexors will have gotten tight. So when I go to stand up, the hip flexors don't want to release. They want to stay tight. And we have to do things that actually allow the hip flexors to release. And to do that, we have to put our hips in extension instead of flexion. So if my hip is in flexion for most of the day, I've got to do something that's going to put it in extension to open up that hip flexor. One of the best exercises to do this is a hip swing. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. It's something really easy that you can do just standing at your desk. So you'll want to stand up. You can put a hand on your desk or on the back of your chair. You want to stand up tall. We're going to squeeze our buns, lift our chest up, drop our shoulders down, pull our belly button in. I'm going to soften my knees so that my knees are not locked out. And then I'm just going to kick front to back with one leg. When I do this, I'm kicking straight back, and that puts my hip in extension. This is also an active release. It's not a static stretch. So it's just great for people who've been sitting for long periods of time and need a moment to work on their hips, but also need something that they can do in work clothes at their desk in their office. I'm going to go 10 on one side, and then I'm going to switch to the other side. Front to back, front to back. Notice my upper body is still. I am only moving my leg. So we don't want to see a lot of leaning posture, because if I'm doing that, I'm not actually opening up the hip flexor, okay? So hip swings, front to back, one of the best exercises that you can do. Also one of the most accessible because you can do it anywhere. You can do it in work clothes, and it puts that hip in extension, gets it out of flexion. Also feels really good to do that. It's going to help with any low back pain that you may have, anything that we can do to get our hips in extension. All right, one of the other exercises that I do a lot with my clients is I will have them take, you can use the edge of a bench like I'm going to use here. You could use even just a chair. So as long as the chair is stable and it's not going to slide out from under you, you could use that. Really anything that you can be in a high plank posture in. So I'm going to step back into my high plank posture with my hands on the edges of my bench, and I'm going to step forward, dropping the back knee down slightly so that I've got that hip in extension. This is an excellent stretch, and it feels really, really good. So I'm going to step forward. My foot is all the way up next to my pinky finger of my hand, and then I'm going to step back. And then I'll step forward on the other side, drop the back knee down so you can see this hip is in extension, and step back, alternating. Step forward and back, step forward, and back. So I'm just alternating here. You're also getting a little core work with this high plank posture and working shoulders as well. If you're really looking to add a strength component, you can always add a push-up. All right, so the main thing though is the stretch. Working those legs, getting those hips in extension and out of flexion. The other thing that I suggest that clients do is do as many of their exercises, especially if you're doing an upper body exercise. Say you're doing a cable row. So if I'm going to do a cable row, I can do that cable row with 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, so that I've got my hip in extension. As I get set, I can do my row that I'm doing with the cable machine or with my dumbbell, all with the one leg back in that lunge posture so that the hip is in extension, and then I can switch sides. So anything that you can do to put the hip in extension is going to help with the hip mobility. You really just have to move it. You gotta move and work on it. Okay, let's talk about hamstrings, and then we'll also go to the mat and I'll show you a few of the mobility techniques using the foam roller that are going to be able to help. So hamstrings can get really tight. Again, it's a common problem that we see. It can cause issues with low back pain. Super common in active people. Runners often have tight hamstrings. And so we're going to show some of the exercises you can do on the foam roller. And I would actually suggest that you do the foam roller stretches or the foam roller exercises and then stretch. But we also want to just work the hamstrings and do the best we can to work on releasing them. So I'm just going to reach down, soften my knees, and let my fingertips drop down toward the floor. You can see my knees are soft, they're not locked out. I can inhale, lift up, and then exhale, drop again. Working a little active release here. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, let gravity work and drop. So each time I'm feeling those hamstring muscles release just a little bit more. And you can do this as many times as you need to be able to see a difference. And even if you're not able to get all the way to the floor, I mean, I feel that stretch through my hamstrings just from doing those few reps there. Okay, so let's go to the floor and we'll show you how to use your foam roller as well to get some release in the hamstrings and also to show a few mobility techniques that will help with the hips as well. I'm going to change our position here so that you guys can see me better. All right. So I actually would suggest that you start with the calves and work your way up. So we've got our legs on our foam roller. And again, this is a 36-inch high density foam roller. You're going to start at the ankle and come all the way up toward the knee. From the ankle up toward the knee, you can go side to side as well as front to back. And then I'm going to want to cross one leg over the other to add a little extra weight. And that's when you're going to really start to feel some of the knots and areas that you need to work on. Okay, I'm going to go one side and then I'll switch to the other side. Everything is connected. So that's why I want to make sure that we get our calves first before we move up to the hamstrings. Because if we've got tightness in one area or the other, it's going to impact our whole body in some way, shape, or form. And injuries may show up in different places because of, if you've got tight hips, you may end up with knee pain. If you got tight hips, it's like you're going to end up with low back pain. If you've got ankle mobility issue, that might also transfer to knee pain. So we've got to think about the whole body to work on specific areas as well. All right, so we're going to move up to the hamstrings, going from the knee up toward your rear end at the top of the hamstring. Now, if this feels easy or like you're not really affecting any change, you can always cross one foot over the other leg, and you'll see I'm going side to side as well as front to back so that I'm really getting into those little muscle fibers. And then I'll switch and work the other leg. Now, if you have access to it, or if you've used a smooth foam roller and you're starting to feel like you're getting to a point of diminishing returns using it, we can also use a tool called the rumble roller. And you'll see this has little ridges that are going to get into the muscle fibers even more. And especially for dense muscles, for the calves, for the hamstrings, the rumble roller, it's much more effective than the smooth roller. You're going to want to start with the smooth roller if you've never done this before, and then just graduate up. But if you've already been rolling and you have access to a rumble roller, then definitely you want to use that when we're working on our hamstrings. So you're going to do the same thing, but you'll feel all of those little ridges just get into the muscle fibers even more. And we're really just working out all of the little knots that have formed. And then we can switch sides. Okay, from there, I'm going to move up the body and I'm going to get into my hips and glutes. So we're going to sit up on top of the roller. We're going to go hand back behind, lean in, my weight is on this side, and I'm going to roll into my glute muscle. Now I can add to this stretch by crossing one leg over the other. Again, rolling into the glute. And then I would want to switch sides. So leaning into the weight of the body into that other side, crossing the foot over to get into that other side as well. Now we don't want to forget that sometimes if we're having tightness in our hip flexors, it could also be impacting our quads or vice versa. So if we have tightness in the quads, it can impact the hips. If we have tightness in the hips, it can impact the quads. So we can roll our quads, and that's also going to help all of these muscles release. Okay? So to do that, we want to take our roller in front. Right in front of our knees, we're going to shift forward. And I can either be in a low plank posture here or a high plank posture, whatever feels best for you. And I'm going to roll from my hip all the way down toward my knee, rolling into those quads. And again, I can go side to side as well as front to back. And then I can also add some weight here and get into those muscles even more by going single side. And then I'll want to switch. So there you have some very simple exercises with not a lot of equipment that you can do that are going to help to impact your hip mobility, tightness in the hamstrings, so that you feel better overall. And it's really going to help with any low back pain that you may have.